Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we are carrying on with Act 8.2 exploration guides, and now we are up to Act 8.23. Now as always, I do have a brief condensed write-up here. If you guys want to take a screenshot, you can do it now or you can do it at the end of the video. I will be bringing this back. It's just I know quite a few of you do like to take some sort of visual aid for when you're actually clearing to refer to instead of rewatching the whole video. So here we go. There are the paths, there are the boss fights. And that's obviously the more condensed version of what we are going to be discussing in the entire video. So as always, I'm going to go through every single path, lane by lane, noting down the more tricky paths, maybe more tricky encounters, and give you the best options for the path fights and for the boss fights. Starting at the very bottom, we have Hale and Hearty, Vigorous Assault, Unhealthy Interactions, and Mystic Ascendancy. So as the name suggests, basically at the bottom, this is a pure Mystic lane, and if you use relatively decent Mystic champions, it's going to be like super easy, because every time either champion builds a bar of power, they gain a regen. Yes, they go unblockable whilst that regen lasts, but you can nullify it, and it also feeds your Mystic Dispersion. Plus you have the Mystic Ascendancy attack boost, and virtually all of the defenders are very easy to deal with. We have like Kamal Khan, Star-Lord, Silver Surfer, Hercules, White Magneto, and then there's Hulkbuster, which is, something you possibly might want to have a counter for, like Dr. Doom or somebody else that's shock immune. But in general, I pretty much tigered the most of the lane. And yeah, you can just pick a Mystic champion and he's going to run through it. There's nothing too tricky. This is one of the easier lanes in the quest, and it's going to go just fine. And speaking of easier lanes in the quest, we also have Exceptional X Gene, where basically whenever the attacker is inflicted with a debuff, the defender gains indefinite prowess passive, but it also is going to work the other way if you have debuff heavy champions. So inflicting 4 or more debuffs will disarm the weapon, then you need to intercept it, and then you're going to be doing a ton of damage to your opponent. There is the Staggering Beauty node, which obviously will cause you to get staggers, but effectively for all intents and purposes, that's just free willpower healing. Power Shield 2 will increase your special attack damage alongside the promises, and it'll make sure that you do little damage outside of that. But again, this is a very cheesy lane for Titania. I might make another video here just because it's ridiculously fun. You can use Null, you can use Scorpion, you can use Mr. Fantastic, what have you. There are some champions that you kind of want to be worried of, obviously, given the fact that there are some skill champions on the lane, but really the only one that can be somewhat tricky is going to be the Misty Knight here, because she does have like a shrug off mechanic, and also a weight mechanic, so kind of be wary of the Misty. My personal recommendation again there would probably be Null. Will work great against it because you already start with the disarming, and yeah, you can do just fine. Again, your more popular science champions that easily inflict 4 or more debuffs, and then your special damage is gonna go boom. Try out Titania here, you will not regret it. Right, moving on to the next lane. We have Thorns, Made of Rubber, Loose Cannon, Brutal Refresher, Retaliate. And this entire lane is effectively the same as the previous in terms of which champions work, with the addition of like Namor or something. Because Namor can just reflect the Thorns damage if you want. But that being said, the easiest way here is bring in your science champions that have a ton of debuffs. I personally picked Scorpion with the anti-Venom synergy, I believe, or Venom synergy, whichever I brought in, just to get some extra furies. And the entire kind of trick of this lane is the Retaliate node, where you want to take all the hits from opponent's special attack on the block, because it is going to give you a very sizable fury buffs, increasing your attack by 75%. So you do not want to do Titania here because you will not get any extra attack, but Scorpions or Anti-Venoms or other science champions that have 4 or more debuffs will completely shut down the Thorns node, because each debuff reduces the Thorns damage by 25%. And as soon as basically you have 4 debuffs on, you can just go ham at the opponent, and there's nothing really to worry about. So again, your Mr. Fantastics, your Scorpions, your Anti-Venoms, your Immortal Abominations, what have you. And as far as the opponents go, there's nothing really too tricky. There are some fights that will be ridiculously fun, like against that Puncher 2099, because you're going to get a ton of furies on you. Right. So also a relatively easy path. This next one, Eternal Flame Ember, it didn't go as great for me. I maybe didn't bring in the perfect team, but the entire point is that you need to dodge a special attack hit and then drop a heavy attack on your opponent, and then you will effectively get something of a power reserve node where whenever you launch a special attack, you will immediately after that special attack regain 40% of the power spent and plus 10% for each unique buff active on you. Again, so dodge a special, drop a heavy, and then you can just spam special attacks. So here, champions like Galen, like Hulkling are exceedingly fun to try out. Or obviously, you can bring in virtually any champion with Odin's pre-fights, and then, you know, you're gonna get back bare minimum of 70% of your power whenever you activate special attacks. There is like Juke, Make a Stand, and Limber. Out of all of those, only node that really kind of matters there's Limber. Otherwise, you could just permanently unlock everybody. But even with that, it's just a mega special spam node. So yeah, Hulklings, your Odin's pre-fight on any champion will do just fine. Nothing too tricky on this lane either. Just bring in a counter for Mr. Fantastic. That Mr. Fantastic can definitely be annoying here. Trust me, I know from experience. So just specifically ignore the nodes and just bring in the best counter for Mr. Fantastic. Something like, I don't know, Archangel or whatever have you. But other than Mr. Fantastic, there's nothing really to worry about. Moving on to path number 5 in this quest, we have Crimson Rage, buff toggle unblockable, buff boost unstoppable, bleed vulnerability, and from my cold dead hands. The entire point of this lane is use bleed. If you use bleed, you do 200% damage that you normally would do. And then the only thing you need to take care of is buff toggle unblockable, which will periodically let your opponents go unblockable. Additionally, you do not want to nullify, stagger, or fate seal your opponent. However, neutralized champions still work, just FYI, so you can target some of this stuff if you want. At the very least, you know, not the torch, but definitely some of them. But in general, bleed champions, your Nick Furies, your Molemans, your Hitmonkeys, your Blade even, all will do just fine. And additionally, you can also use like Valkyrie or slow champions if you wish. Whoops, I actually moved there. Valkyrie or slow champions just to take care of that unstoppable and then play around that unblockable. It's not too hard. It doesn't last long. And yeah, it's fairly straightforward. So again, primarily bleed champions plus Valk plus slow champs. And here, then moving on to the final path, it's actually quite fun lane. The final lane, well, whenever it's going to let me show, it's stacking power, parry vulnerability, prey on the weak, prey on the feeble. The entire point of this is you just want champions that gain a lot of buffs. And then you're going to be gaining a ton of power. My personal favorite experience here was with my rank 3 Colossus plus Omega Red synergy and just parry heavy everything, and you can just basically spam your level 2s back to back to back often. It is crazy good amount of fun. You should definitely try it out. So Colossus plus Omega Red synergy. Other than that, you can obviously pretty much get an infinite special spam here with Galen. You can use Hulkling, you can use other cosmic buff heavy champions, or in theory, to be honest, you can use virtually any champion that isn't buff immune, because even triggering dexterity and then hitting the opponent will count as 2 triggers for stacking power. And then obviously parrying also gives you power. So in reality, you can use virtually any champion. But again, the more buffs you have, the more power you gain. And then obviously, do not forget, try out Colossus. Well, worth the fun. And then we need to take a look at the boss fights. In the boss fights, start up with Ronin. And the only kind of truly annoying node there is Be Like Water, really. Other than that, it's perfectly doable. So Cosmic Avalanche, Cosmic Attackers get a boost during special attacks, that's fine. Rising Sun can give any champion buffs, but make sure you need to drop your heavy attacks. Give Me Shelter lets your opponent auto block if you do not have buffs active. Basically, you need like 3 buffs. This chance decrease by 10. You need 5 in total, but you know, the more buffs you have, the less chance they have to auto block. And Be Like Water will make sure he goes unblockable on parries. Obviously, Be Like Water can be played around with Magneto House of X pre-fight, and then you can use virtually any cosmic champion and you're going to have no problems. For instance, bring in Magneto House of X pre-fight and use Hulkling or Odin or something. And then, you know, if you don't debuff the guy, he will never go unblockable. And if you have enough buffs, he will never auto-block you. Then you just need to keep an eye on Rising Sun. Personally, I actually, for most part, use Juggernaut, and then I just drop my heavy attacks in the middle of my combo against the wall, or if I needed, I'd still landed that parry. The danger of this fight is obviously Ronin does get his attack increased with the buffs that you gain. So if you do get clipped, you're going to get clipped hard. But again, Odin and Odin's pre-fights pretty much make most of the champions kind of like able to do this fight. And then you want to use a champion that has an easy access to heavy attacks or Magneto House Effects pre-fight. Again, you can use Hercules to prevent auto-block as well. And as long as you don't debuff him too often, you'll be fine. You can also just slow play it with a whole bunch of Cosmic Champions and you will not struggle too much because obviously it's still Ronin. It's not the hardest champ to fight. Now, Nimrod is a straightforward fight. Whenever he uses special attack, he goes stun immune. You do get a power boost for Mystic attackers. There is Divine Barrier that will periodically make him go Nullify immune. We have Wax on, Wax off, which will be helpful to you to purify the debuffs. But you can Tiger it, you can Wiccan it, you can Rinter it, you can Longshot it. Most of the Mystic champions will work here just fine, or even you can use somebody like King Groot, for instance. It's not going to be too much of a problem either. For most part, it's just basically a stun immune Nimrod. But there's not too much to it. Utilize the fact that he has quite a lot of buffs to overcharge your Mystics if you want. You don't have to. So either. Then moving on, we have Ebb and Flow, Knockdown Joe Fix-It, and Bleed Vulnerability. But Bleed Vulnerability is accompanied by Mighty Charge, and there's also Cramping. So you do not want to get a weakness debuff on you, or you will be suffering hard and heavy. So in order to avoid that, ideally you just want to use like Purify characters. Obviously you can play around it and kind of skill your way through this fight as well. I personally just chose to go in with Kingpin, take a bit longer, and did it just fine. Shang-Chi will work fantastic for this fight. Also, Black Panther, Hitmonkey, most of your skilled champions who have some sort of purification abilities. If you can inflict bleed, it's a big bonus, but it can't be kind of like the main focus of the fight because of Mighty Charge. So again, just take a bit slower. Shang-Chi, Black Panther, Kingpin, Hitmonkey, all of whom will do just fine job here. If I have to pick the easiest boss, I personally went with Ronin in most cases. All of them are fairly straightforward. None of the bosses is particularly hard. Kind of depends what team you have brought in. And that is it for this guide. So again, quick recap. Vigorous Assault. Basically fill it with Mystic champs. Dooms, Tigers, Clairs, Jags, Longshots, Wiccan. All will do fantastic. X-Gene. We have Null, Titania. Actually need to delete the Titania from this one. My bad. Do not want to use Titania here. Titania is a buff immune, you're not going to get attack bonus. There you go. But in X-Gene, Null, Titania, Scorpion, Anti-Venom, Mr. Fantastic, and other debuff heavy champions. And Thorns lane, Scorpion, Namor, Anti-Venom, Cap Infinity War plus synergies, Eye-Bomb. Howard the Duck will do great as well because you can have a ton of debuffs there. Eternal Flame, Galen, Hulkling, Herc, Angela, Odin, free fights plus, Guardians, Pennies, whatever champions highly benefit from special spams. Crimson Rage, it's all about bleed or slow. So basically Mole, Blade, Nick, Black Panther. You can use Valkyrie as well because she ignores Unstoppable. You can use Warlock. He has solid access to bleed persistently. And then stacking power, Colossus plus Omega Cheese is absolute great amount of fun. And other than that, again, just you can literally use any champions there. But Galen, Cersei, Hype, Surfer, Hulkling, I'm sure a bunch of wonderful options. Boss fights against Ronin, Juggernaut, Hercules, Odin, Null, Hulkling. I'm going to add in that Wags pre-fights help. Plus Wags pre-fight helps a lot. And then we have Tiger, Longshot, King Groot, Mojo against the Nimrod, Joe Fix-It, Kingpin, Black Panther, Shang-Chi, Jabari, Mole, so on and so forth. So there we go. That is more or less 823. Not the hardest quest at all, But I do hope that this guide will be helpful to you. And if it was, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the other buttons, and I will be back with more guides soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about